peaceful protests against their president, who continues to refuse to step down. Many of them had been searched as they had been the day before. We are getting reports that as the pro-Mubarak supporters moved in, there was very little control in the form of finding out what sort of weapons they had and stopping them from taking their weapons. They also came in large numbers. They were very well organized. We heard reports of busloads coming from the airport and feeding these men into the Tahrir Square. The Tahrir Square has emptied out a lot now. Many of the pro-Mubarak supporters leaving. You are still aware now of Molotov cocktails being thrown towards the anti-government demonstrators. There were fires to the left of those anti-government demonstrators in the court. A couple of cars were set on fire, and intermittent with the gunfire. So we've been hearing machine gun fire. We've been hearing loud bangs in the last half an hour or so.
Yeah, we're just seeing in the last few seconds as you've been speaking a bunch of people approaching, throwing Molotov cocktails or these homemade fire bombs being thrown at those homemade barricades that you were describing. This seems to be another sort of wave of demonstrators from one group attacking the other group. I don't know if you can see this picture, but it's not clear what the groups are from this. We've been hearing descriptions from anti-government demonstrators that it's been the pro-government demonstrators who've been throwing these, but they have as well, confusing and scenes of these running battles.
Yeah, I mean, from my viewpoint, it's definitely the pro-government demonstrators who are throwing the Molotov cocktails. And I mean, I'm looking at there's a big group there of about 60 men or so, and They are feeding the Molotov cocktails to each other and just throwing them in a steady stream there. You can hear how the anti-government demonstrators are responding. They're banging on those metal barriers, screaming and shouting at them, "We're not going to go away." Yeah. Look how many are going. Individual sounds of fire still ringing out. We're not sure in what direction that is coming from. From what direction?
I mean, the question's got to be asked. The demonstrations in Tahrir Square have been, by and large, peaceful. A sit-in, a kind of vigil, if you like. But what we're seeing today are assaults. Well organized. These Molotov cocktails must have been built somewhere in enormous numbers, in good numbers at least. Live gunfire being shot into crowds of unarmed civilians demonstrating in Tahrir Square. How could this have happened? There must surely have been knowledge of some sort high up in the administration.
Well, that's why there is so much speculation that this is indeed state-sponsored, and you speak to a lot of the anti-government demonstrators. They said they went in there without their weapons, knowing that it was going to be peaceful, and suddenly these men came and they were weapons up. Where did they get these supplies from? It's obvious that the government cannot put back a police force. The police force is what was behind much of the violence Friday. The police force is behind much of the violence in the country. It would cause outrage across the country if the government, if Mubarak was to do that. So there is a belief, as we've seen in the past, over the last decade, that state-sponsored thugs or plainclothes policemen would go in. It's a belief that this is exactly what has happened again. And this is where they, how come for the last 15, 16 hours or so, they've had so much in the form of artillery and weapons and Molotovs and those busloads of people being shipped in. If that is indeed true, then I would guess that we're going to see pretty much more of the same. That a lot of them have probably gone back to restock and continue this. It seems to be the last sort of desperate measure by the Mubarak regime. He threatened to stay on until September and not step down. That didn't go down well. He's made these overtures. That didn't go down well. What was very interesting was yesterday we saw a change in sentiment by many Egyptians. They were saying, look, the president has said that he won't step down now, but he will go. This is the end of his regime. Let's stop these demonstrations. Let's get the country back to some sort of normality. Let's get our kids back into school. and the demonstrators didn't go. So there was a change of sentiment against them. After this fighting, though, after this, what seems to be government-sponsored fighting, that sentiment has again turned away from Mubarak. Whatever support he had, that certainly seems to have quashed that support.
I just want to mention at this point, we're getting reports in that the human rights group, Human Rights Watch, which is based in the United States, is calling on the United States to cut off its massive military aid to Egypt if further violence does indeed target anti-government protesters in Cairo. As we've mentioned, we have reports, unconfirmed, that 4 people have been killed. Egyptian sources being quoted on the wire agencies are saying that hundreds have been injured. Human Rights Watch, or HRW, is saying, quote, Egyptian security forces failed to protect those peacefully assembling in Tahrir Square in Cairo on February the 2nd of 2011 from pro-government provocateurs, this is their language, not ours, armed with petrol bombs, sticks and whips. As I mentioned to one of the witnesses we had from the square, the world is watching. There's been incredible amount of Twitter activity, internet activity and attention in all media to what's been going on. How is this affecting people there? Are they conscious that they are in the international glare?
Oh, I think they certainly are. I think if you have heard the response to Al Jazeera in particular, we were accused by the regime of inflaming much of the violence. A lot of the pro-government supporters chanting is about Al Jazeera, about anti-Al Jazeera. So they know that this international media has the cameras on what is unfolding. They're not happy about that. You are very aware that the other big international media organizations are here. So people are aware of the kind of interest that this is generating. If you had to just look at local TV, you would assume that it's not as big as it is. They certainly select their pictures. They just show the pro-Mubarak supporters. They give reports that the country is returning to relative calm when clearly it's not. Everybody is aware here, obviously. They are quite politicized of the roles that the U.S. has, the fact that Egypt is the second largest recipient of aid after Israel. Many of the tear gas canisters that were fired on Friday after prayers had the stamp of the U.S. on it. They're also hearing reports of how many international citizens are fleeing from the country. We've just heard again today that the U.S. is trying to trying to evacuate the remaining thousands of citizens that live here. So the Egyptians know that they are not alone in this. They know that this is generating so much interest. If this is the most populous Arab nation, they are aware that what happens in this country will have such a domino effect, such a ripple effect in the region.
Difficult to imagine at this point what it's like in the square for those people, even knowing that they are not alone. But we can find out for ourselves by speaking to activist Amr Garbeya, who is in Tahrir Square, translating as Liberation Square, and he joins us on the line now. It's been really difficult to imagine what it's like there with all this gunfire breaking out. Tell us what's happening now. Amr?
Hello?
Hi, Amr, can you tell us what's happening now there? Because we have only been able to listen to the gunfire and imagine.
It's been a horrific night. The people sitting in the square managed to keep the square. They pushed an attack by supposedly pro-Mubarak supporters two sides, and right now the fighting has ended from the west side and from the east side, but the north side, the front has been pushed back and all the way beyond the museum to the sector of civil goods, and there are now few barricades separating the square and the front line, and there are sounds of gunfire.
Can you tell us, Amr Garbeya, activist in Tahrir Square, who's on the line now, what you think about the army, which has not intervened to protect the demonstrators?
The army has come down to just initially to keep the peace, but this is not what the army is doing. At least not consistently. At one time, the army did from the West End. I'm supposing there are different commanders to these units. From the West End, the army has indeed separated the two sides and has chased those people who are playing outside the peaceful protesters from another side, the northern side. The army has been completely withdrawn and has actually the soldiers went into the tanks, and people were standing on the tanks and throwing rockets at each other, and right now it's not part of anything.
It's quite difficult to understand what you're saying. Obviously, communications have been very difficult. So I'm just going to ask you to stand by for the moment while we try and improve the line. Amar Garbeya, an activist, anti-government activist based in Tahrir Square. But we did hear him, of course, say that it has been a horrific night. You're looking at live picture, though, at the moment from Tahrir Square, where it is at 6:15. And it looked like a battle of some sort was emerging or was developing between the two rival groups, anti and pro Mubarak, who've been clashing on and off all day for the last, what, 12, 14 hours or so. There we go. Another homemade firebomb apparently going off, being thrown into those makeshift barricades that have been put up, as we heard from one of our correspondents, by the anti-Mubarak demonstrators. It's been, the worst part, of course, was about 2 hours ago when we first heard the heavy machine gun fire going off. It's been really confusing to tell where it's coming from, who's being hurt. The only thing we know is that at least 4 people have been killed, according to reputable wire agencies, but that hasn't been confirmed by Al Jazeera. We heard from an unnamed Egyptian source that many people have been injured. There was shock expressed by the people in the square that this could be happening in the central of this major Middle Eastern city, the capital of Egypt, that women, children, unarmed civilians who were in the group were being fired upon. So it's been a really shocking, horrific night, as we've been hearing. Tamar Al-Said is also in Tahrir, near the museum, the northern side of the square, and we've heard that anti-government demonstrators have been able to push back there. Are these battles still going on? Oh, there we're hearing the thud of the beating of the metal barricades that we had heard about from our other correspondent. Tamar Al-Said, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but please try to shout a bit because it's so difficult to hear you here.
Yes, tell us what that is, that bang, bang, bang that we're hearing.
Sorry, again, I can't hear you.
What is that we're hearing?
What's what?
That bang, bang, bang.
I'm standing next to the museum, and we pushed the gangs of the NDP to Abdullah Riyadh Square, and they were attacking us from the bridge with the Molotov bombs and bullets and real bullets, and we have at least 10 people who injured by real bullets. And now they came back to the bridge and they are attacking us with the Molotov bombs, a lot of Molotov bombs, and the stones. And a minute ago, they were also shoot some bullets on us.
Tamar Al-Said, tell us what your reaction has been. There are some people who have been leaving, we've heard, because of the danger.
I can't hear you, sorry.
It's all right. Are you going to leave because of the danger?
What?
Are you going to leave because of the danger?
No, nobody will leave. Nobody will leave. I'm assuring you, nobody will leave. Everybody here in Tahrir Square is asking to keep going and to stand in Tahrir Square. We will not leave until Mubarak will leave. He will leave, we will not.